New Mexico Territory, March 1873. The wind carried the smell of ash and blood down from the hills before the horses even crested the ridge. Quinn reined in his mare and narrowed his eyes at the thin line of smoke rising from the basin below. His rifle was across his lap, the barrel still warm from the last shot. Dust clung to his boots and the back of his neck was red from the sun. He had been riding hard for 2 days, tracking a trail that twisted through dry creek beds and rocky passes. Now, finally, it ended here. The farmhouse had been burned to a black skeleton, smoke curling from its charred beams. The barn was gone. The chicken coop was splinters. The land was quiet in that strange, hollow way things are when something awful just happened. Quinn dismounted, rifle in hand. The bodies near the porch were still warm. He stepped over them, boots crunching on broken glass, and pushed into the remains of the house. The roof had collapsed, but the stone hearth still stood, and so did the woman crouched beside it, her back to him, holding something long and sharp in both hands. He cleared his throat. She turned fast, blood on her cheek, a broken knife clutched in her fist. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, soot streaking her arms and neck. Her eyes were wild, but she did not flinch. "You are not one of them," she said. Her voice was cracked but firm. "No, ma'am," Quinn said. "I tracked them here." She studied him, as if trying to decide if he was another kind of danger. Then she stood straight. "I am Nora Nels, Quinn Varen." She nodded like that settled something. "I had 2 children," she said, "Gabe and Gracie. They were taken." "How long ago?" "Last night." Quinn looked around. The tracks were still fresh. "Were they hurt?" "No, not that I saw. They were scared, but they were alive." That was enough. "I will help you get them back," Quinn said. He did not say it like a promise. He said it like a fact. Nora's eyes shone, but she blinked fast and wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Why would you help me?" He looked at her torn dress, her scraped knuckles, the blood on her jaw that was not her own. She had survived something terrible and was still standing. "Because someone needs to," he said. She nodded once, then walked past him and stepped over the threshold of her burned home without looking back. They rode out before the sun fully set. By dawn, they had found the first trail marker boot prints, small ones and wagon wheels cutting deep into soft earth. The kidnappers were not subtle. Quinn guessed they were not local, probably part of the roving bands that hunted small ranches and sold children to mining towns or worse. They made camp that night beneath a rocky overhang. Quinn started a small fire while Nora unwrapped a bundle of jerky from her saddlebag. She moved quietly but not timidly. There was a steadiness in her now, a purpose. "Thank you," she said, handing him half. "You do not have to thank me. I do not trust easily. I do not expect you to." She looked at him across the fire. "You smell like blood and smoke," she said. Quinn smiled just a little. "So do you." She stared at him, then she said, "Let's get married." He blinked. "What if we survive this?" she said. "If we get my children back, if you are still standing and so am I, then let's get married." Quinn looked at her, not just at her face, but at the firelight flickering in her eyes and the steadiness of her hands. At the way she sat with her back straight, even after all she had been through. "All right," he said. "We will." They found the camp the next night. It was tucked into a narrow canyon, firelight flickering against the stone walls. There were 6 men, a rusted wagon, and a pair of small figures curled beneath a blanket near the rear wheel. Quinn handed Nora the spare pistol from his saddlebag. "You stay back. If things go wrong, I can shoot," she said. He believed her. They crept down the slope together, using the rocks in the dark. At 30 yards, he could see Gabe's face, pale and scared but alive. Gracie was curled against him. Quinn's jaw clenched. He moved fast after that. The first man never saw the bullet coming. The second shouted, but Quinn was already moving, rifle cracking twice more. The camp exploded into chaos. Nora fired once, then twice. A man screamed and fell near the wagon. Quinn grabbed Gracie and Gabe, lifting them both at once. "Mama's here," he said. "You are going home." Nora ran to them, dropping the pistol, arms out. The children clung to her as if they would never let go. The last kidnapper tried to run. Quinn shot him in the back. Silence fell. The fire crackled. The children cried into their mother's shoulder. They camped 2 days outside of what remained of Nora's ranch. The children slept curled together near the fire. Nora sat beside Quinn, her skirt hem mended with spare thread, her hair pulled back with a strip of cloth. "You kept your word," she said. "So did you," he said. "We are both still standing." She looked at him. "I meant what I said, so did I." She leaned in and kissed him. It was not soft or uncertain. It was firm, settled, like a promise made real. When she pulled back, her hand stayed on his chest. "I do not need a preacher or paper," she whispered. "But I want you beside me, from now on." "You have me," Quinn said. "All of me." And under the stars, with her children asleep and the fire warming their faces, they held each other close. They had come through fire and blood, but they were alive, and they were in love. The rains came late that year, threading across the desert in thin, silver sheets that left more scent than water. The land around the ranch blackened with soot, and ruin had begun to shift under Nora's hands, stone by stone, board by board. Quinn built the new fencing while Gabe helped tamp posts with a heavy mallet nearly half his size. Gracie collected nails in her apron, careful not to step in the ash that still clung to the edges of the yard. The house would take longer. For now they slept in the rebuilt bunkhouse, its roof low-slung and patched, but dry. Nora had lined the shelves with jars of dried beans and flour sacks stacked against the wall. She kept a tin of coffee tucked high, out of Gracie's reach. One morning, before the heat crept in, Nora stood at the edge of the field where the old corral had burned flat. She held a bundle of wild broom in one hand. Quinn stepped up beside her, wiping his brow with the back of his wrist. His shirt clung to his shoulders, damp with sweat and dust. "I found a team out of Las Cruces," he said. "Mexican brothers, know how to raise adobe better than anyone I've seen." She nodded, eyes still on the field. "I can pay them. I've been setting money aside since before the fire. I already told them we'd both be working alongside." They didn't blink at that. "I don't want charity." Quinn leaned on the handle of his shovel. "Neither do I." She glanced over, her mouth twitching. "You're a hard man to argue with." "I don't argue. I listen, then keep doing what's right." She gave a soft grunt, something between amusement and exasperation. "You're getting too used to me." "You think so? Most men would have tried to fix me. You just keep handing me tools and letting me work. You're not broken." She turned to him finally. "I was. The night they took my children, I felt something inside me split apart." His throat worked once before he spoke. "You held it together long enough to get them back. Because of you." "No, Nora, because of you. I was just there to back you up." For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind pulled gently at her skirt. Somewhere behind them, Gracie's laughter rang out as Gabe chased her toward the water trough. Nora said, "I don't know what love's supposed to look like after all this." Quinn didn't answer right away. He crouched and began clearing the last burned boards from the old barn's foundation. She joined him, kneeling beside him in the dirt. "It looks like this," he said after a while. "The work, the silence, the staying." She picked up a rusted hinge and turned it in her fingers. "My pa used to say love was a fire you couldn't see until it was too late." "My pa never said much of anything." She looked over. "You speak like someone who's lost more than he says." He kept his eyes on the wood. "I had a brother, younger, took a bullet in Kansas. We were moving cattle. He stepped in front of me. She let that settle. Does it still ache? Every day, she nodded. Then you understand. Quinn straightened, brushing dirt from his knees. I think we both do. The adobe crew arrived the next week, and with them came the sound of hammers and the rich, earthen smell of wet clay. Nora worked alongside them, her hair tied back with a strip of cotton, her arms streaked with grit. She moved easily among men who respected her for her labor, not her sorrow. Quinn handled the beams, his broad shoulders bearing weight without complaint. He didn't speak more than needed, but when he did, it was with quiet certainty that steadied everyone around him. One evening, as the walls reached waist height, Gabe ran up holding something wrapped in oilcloth. "Mama," he said, breathless, "we found this buried near the old root cellar." She unwrapped it carefully, an old photograph, faded but intact. Her and her husband, years younger, standing at this very place. He wore suspenders and a crooked grin. She, a faded calico dress with a hand resting on her swollen belly. Quinn looked away, giving her space. Nora's voice was low. He built this place with his hands. He died thinking it would stand long after him. And now it will, Quinn said. She folded the picture and pressed it to her chest for a moment before tucking it into her apron. That night, after the children were asleep, she stood at the edge of the bunkhouse doorway, watching the moon rise over the ridge. Quinn leaned against the post beside her, arms crossed loosely. "I've been thinking," she said. "About us." He stayed quiet, letting her find her words. "I've seen what a man becomes when life turns cruel, seen them go hollow or mean. You didn't. You stayed kind." "I don't always feel kind," he said, "but you choose it. That's rarer than most think." She stepped in front of him. "I want you beside me, not just for today, for the long haul. When the roof leaks, when the cattle get sick, when the children grow and leave." He looked at her, that steady gaze holding hers. "Then let's marry, soon as the house has a door on it," she nodded. "No preacher, no gathering, just us and the land. Then we'd best hurry. Those walls won't raise themselves." She put her hand against his chest, feeling the rhythm of his breath. "You're warm. You're tired, but steady," she said. "So are you." She leaned in then, her lips brushing his jaw. "We're building something. We are." And beneath that wide, endless sky, they stood together, the wind soft, the earth firm beneath their feet, and the future slowly taking shape between their hands. The adobe walls dried pale and strong, catching the morning sun like stone warmed from the inside. By mid-April, the roof beams were set, and the crew packed their tools and rode south with dust trailing behind them. Quinn watched them go, then turned to the half-built house and laid his palm against the frame of what would be their doorway. Inside, Nora folded a strip of muslin into a neat square and slipped it into a cedar box, tucking it between a worn Bible and a handful of cloth buttons. Gracie was asleep on a bedroll, her chest rising slow and even. Gabe was out near the creek, tending the snares he'd set with Quinn's quiet instruction. Nora stepped outside, wiping her hands on her skirt. "We'll need window glass," she said. "There's a supply run coming up out of Silver City," Quinn replied. "I'll ride in tomorrow." She nodded, then leaned against the porch post. "We should mark the lintel. My father always carved the date when something began." Quinn glanced at the timber above them. "What would you carve?" She looked at him. "Not a date, a name." He tilted his head. "Yours, ours." He took his pocket knife from his belt and held it out. "Then you start." She climbed the step and etched slow strokes into the wood, her hand steady. He watched the blade move, watched her mouth press into a line of concentration. When she finished, she handed it back. He read the name aloud. "Varen." She folded her arms. "It's the name that brought my children home." Quinn's voice was quiet. "It's the name I'll carry proud." That night, thunder rolled low over the mountains, but no rain came. The four of them shared a pot of beans thick with salt pork, and afterward, Nora taught Gracie how to thread a needle by lantern light. Gabe sat beside Quinn, carving a slingshot handle from mesquite. "You ever hunt turkey?" Gabe asked. "Plenty of times." "Think I could?" "Not yet," Quinn said. "But soon." Nora glanced over. "He's not afraid of work." "Neither of them are," Quinn said. Later, after the children were asleep, Nora pulled a shawl around her shoulders and stepped outside. Quinn was already there, sitting on the step, the stars bright above the ridge. She eased down beside him, close enough their arms touched. "You ever miss the trail?" she asked. "Sometimes. The quiet, the way the air moves different near a canyon wall. I used to think I'd hate stillness, but it's different when it's your own land." She looked at him sideways. "What'll you do when the house is done?" He didn't answer right away. "I'd like to build a smokehouse, maybe clear a bit more pasture east of the barn, and after that," he turned toward her, "after that I'd like to wake up beside you, every day." She held his gaze. "You still want to marry me?" I said I did. "Words are easy. So is staying," he said, "if it's with you." She searched his face for some hint of hesitation. There wasn't any. "I want something quiet and lasting," she said. "Not fire that burns out in a season." "Then we'll build slow," he said, "and steady." She leaned against him. "I've seen men who run when things get hard." "So have I," he said. "But I've also seen what it looks like when someone digs in." "You think we'll be happy?" "I don't think," he said. "I know." She went still, letting the words settle. Then she reached for his hand and laced her fingers through his. A breeze rustled the grass beyond the fence. The lantern inside guttered low. Somewhere out in the dark, a coyote called once, then fell silent. "We'll marry when the windows are in," she said. "I want the light to shine through when we stand together." "I'll bring back glass and a preacher," he said. She squeezed his hand. "Just the first." He smiled, then kissed her, slow and sure, with the kind of quiet that doesn't need to be spoken. And when they pulled apart, she didn't let go. Neither did he. By early May, the glass had arrived in crates packed with straw and wrapped in oilcloth. Quinn brought it home strapped to the back of the mule, his horse walking alongside with a slower gait than usual. The trip to Silver City had taken 3 days out and 2 back, and he'd returned with more than just the windows. There were hinges, a sack of coffee beans, a bundle of calico Nora hadn't asked for, and a box of graphite pencils for Gabe. Nora met him at the gate, wiping her hands on her apron. There was a streak of flour along her forearm and a faint scar now healed along her temple from the night everything burned. She didn't ask what took so long. She just helped him unload. "I didn't expect cloth," she said, lifting the folded calico. "I saw it in the mercantile," Quinn replied. "Thought it might suit you." She didn't thank him. She didn't need to. That evening, Gabe sat hunched over a scrap of paper by lantern light, sketching the outline of a hawk he'd seen near the ridge. Gracie curled in Nora's lap, half asleep, thumb in her mouth. Nora brushed the girl's hair back slowly, her fingers moving with the rhythm of breath. Quinn leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching them from the shadows just beyond the lamplight. "You do that often," Nora said without looking up. "What's that? Stand there like you're not sure if you belong in the light." He stepped inside, the wood creaking under his boots. "It's not the light I doubt, just the right to it. You've earned it." He hesitated, then crouched beside her. "I saw a man in Silver City. Had a badge and a scar across his chin. Asked if I was the one who put down that crew in the canyon." "What did you say?" I said I was. She studied his face. "Did he offer you something?" "Deputy Starr. Said they needed men who could shoot straight and read signs." "And?" I told him I already had a place. She let out a breath that wasn't quite relief, but close to it. "I'm not leaving, Nora." "I know." He reached over and gently lifted Gracie from her lap, carrying her to the cot. Gabe didn't look up from his drawing. The boy had his mother's stillness, but his focus was sharper each day. When the children were settled, Nora stepped outside. The night smelled of earth and sage. The moon hung low, brushing the tops of the cottonwoods. Quinn followed and stood beside her without speaking. She said, "I buried something out beyond the fence, after the fire." He looked at her, waiting. "A pair of boots, my husband's. I couldn't bring myself to burn them. But I couldn't keep them either." "What made you think of them now?" She turned toward him. "I don't want ghosts in the new house." "There won't be." She nodded once, then reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a folded scrap of linen. Inside was a brass ring, plain and narrow, worn smooth at the edges. She held it out. "I had this melted down from an earring my mother gave me. I want you to wear it." He didn't take it at first. "You sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Quinn took the ring and slid it onto his left hand without ceremony. It fit snug, no looseness to it. "It's warm." "It will be." They stood in silence for a while, the kind that didn't need filling. The house behind them was nearly done, just one shutter left to hang, one latch to fit. But the hardest parts had already been laid, not in beams or clay, but in trust carried quiet between them. "I want to plant a peach tree beside the porch," Nora said. "Then we will. And I want to teach Gracie how to read before the year's out. She's ready." "I think I am too," Nora said. Quinn reached for her hand. "We'll do it together." She rested her head against his shoulder, and they stayed that way until the night turned cool and the last lantern flickered out. From the edge of the dark, the house rose behind them, solid and full of breath. It waited, not as a monument to what had been lost, but as a beginning, a place where the past had been laid to rest. And two people, quiet and steady, had chosen to build something that would last. By late June, the adobe house stood finished, its smooth walls sun-warmed and solid, with a front door made of pine Quinn had sanded down himself. The glass panes caught the morning light and threw it in soft shapes across the floorboards Nora had scrubbed on her knees until her hands went red. The peach sapling she'd planted near the porch had taken to the soil, its leaves tender and green, curling upward like it knew it had a place here. On a Sunday morning, with no clouds in sight and the air already warm by sunup, Nora tied her hair back with the same strip of cotton she'd worn through the worst of it, and laid out a dress she hadn't touched since before the fire. It was plain deep blue with a high collar, but she'd stitched a row of small white flowers along the edge of the sleeves in quiet hours after the children had gone to sleep. Gracie and Gabe were out gathering wildflowers with their baskets swinging between them. Quinn had gone to the creek early with a linen shirt folded under his arm, one Nora had mended without telling him the night he tore the sleeve hauling a beam into place. When he returned, she was on the porch, arms crossed loosely, watching the hills. "You're early," she said. "I wanted to see your face when you knew it was time." She stepped down and took both his hands, turning them over in hers. "You didn't shave." "I did, just not careful." He touched the edge of his jaw where a nick had dried. "I figured you wouldn't want me soft." "I don't want you different," Nora said. "I want you honest." He looked around the yard. "Should we call the children? They're already waiting." She led him behind the house, where Gabe had cleared a patch beside the cottonwood. Gracie had lined up the flowers in uneven rows, her thumbs stained yellow from goldenrod. The two children stood barefoot in the grass, watching with wide, steady eyes. Nora turned to Quinn. "No preacher, no paper, just the earth and us." He nodded. She reached into her bodice and drew out a length of rawhide cord. "This was my father's. He used to bind fence wire with it. I saved it." Quinn offered his hand and she wrapped it once, then twice, before lifting her own to meet his. The knot she tied was simple, firm, and meant to hold. "I vow to walk beside you," she said, "to build steady, to speak plain, to stay." He looked her in the eye. "I vow to lift what's heavy, to guard what's yours, and to be yours every day I wake." Gracie clapped once, then pressed her hands over her mouth. Gabe grinned, shoulders squared like he understood the weight of the moment and welcomed it. Nora leaned in and kissed Quinn with both hands still bound to his. It was not a first kiss, nor a desperate one. It was planted like a fence post, driven deep, meant to last. That night, the four of them ate fresh beans and flatbread on the porch while the wind moved through the cottonwood. Quinn carved their names into the lintel above the door with Gabe's help, each letter slow and deep. Gracie curled against Nora's hip, her breath warm through the fabric of her skirt. When the sun fell behind the ridge, Quinn and Nora stayed outside while the children curled into bed. Fireflies blinked along the edge of the pasture. "You miss the quiet?" Nora asked. "This is quiet. Not the same kind." He shook his head. "No, this is better." She reached for his hand. "I used to think a good life was something that passed you by unless you chased it down. And now, I think a good life is something you make with your hands." He turned toward her. "You made this. We made it." They sat until the fire burned low, her head resting beneath his chin, his arm around her shoulders. The house behind them breathed with the slow rhythm of sleep. The land no longer felt like something to survive, it felt like something they belonged to. Years later, the peach tree bore fruit. The bunkhouse became a schoolroom where Nora taught Gracie her letters and Gabe practiced his drawing. Now with charcoal, Quinn showed him how to burn himself. The scars faded, though some stayed. They never minded. They were reminders of what they had come through. Nora kept the rawhide cord in the drawer beside the bed. "It's not still tight." They never left the ranch. They never needed to. And every morning, when Quinn rose before the sun and Nora tied her hair back with that same strip of cotton, she would find his hand in hers, warm, steady, and still hers.